Hello and welcome to the first episode of this new series where I, Leah Hartman, am joined by co-host Perry Kitai, journalist and huge basketball fan. We will be covering all things women's basketball, WNBA, and basketball in general. So stay tuned as we have a lot of really exciting and important topics to talk about today. Let's jump right in to the CBA negotiation. A few new things have been proposed by the WNBA. The first one, for top earning players in the WNBA, the new base salary proposed is just over $1 million, 1.1 million is the proposed value. And on top of this, players will be getting a revenue share in the league. This revenue share is supposed to increase a few percentage points, but the WNBPA is not too happy about this because they want the revenue share to increase as the league increases in revenue.
So to understand the revenue sharing a little bit more in the WNBA, because the WNBA is different than other leagues like the NBA or just other men's professional leagues in general, right now in the current CBA, which was negotiated in 2020 in a pre-COVID world, the WNBA said, we'll share some revenue with you, but only if we hit a certain benchmark of revenue in the league. So we as a league need to earn a certain amount of money. And after that amount of money, we'll give you some percentage, less than 10% of that, for you all to distribute amongst yourself. Then COVID happened, which didn't allow the WNBA to play their season. And the revenue lost there essentially impacted this current CBA, so that for the rest of the CBA until now, 2025, the WNBA has never reported passing that benchmark. So WNBA players haven't seen a single cent of revenue sharing to this point. Furthermore, for the contracts on the last CBA, every year it's normal in professional sports for your salary cap to increase. The WNBA had what the players view as an arbitrary number of 3% fixed increase every year. Why 3%? Nobody knows. Instead, what you were saying, Leah, is that the WNBA players want the increase to be proportional to the revenue that's being earned. So exactly. The WNBA is growing every year. We're earning a certain amount of money. We're making a certain amount of money. And we as the players think that our salaries and our earnings should reflect that growth from a percentage proportional standpoint instead of we're going to increase 3% this year and we're going to increase 4% next year, because the players feel that's cheating them out of money that's well deserved, especially now that after this last CBA, they have no reason to trust the WNBA if there is that benchmark put in place. Because the WNBA, part of the problem here is that they haven't actually reported what they're earning. Nobody knows. Nobody has any idea what revenue the WNBA is actually bringing in right now.
Definitely, yeah. And obviously, WNBA players are not happy about this. And along with this increase of money, which may from the outside kind of seem like, oh, you know, they're increasing salaries. It kind of looks good, but there's two things that the WNBA wants to take away. And one of them is team housing, and the other is they want to make the season earlier. What does that take away? Well, it hurts a few certain types of players. First, a college player. So you're kind of taking away their ability to compete far in March Madness. Yeah. If, like a Paige Beckers last season won the NCAA championship on April 6th, they want to push the beginning of the WNBA season to be like mid-March. So it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense for a number of reasons. A, we're already on our second extension of the current negotiations, and this is the first we're hearing of this. We hadn't heard of, the league wants to expand the season before this. There have been different talking points on the table. It's the first time team housing has been brought up as well. There's been talking points about family planning, about charters, about league resources and how they're used for practice facilities and kind of leveling the playing field regardless of which owners decide to invest however much money into their facilities for their players, of just starting at a base. Every player, every team deserves this level of facility and this level of treatment and care and respect for our bodies and our well-beings.
Yeah.
With the season expanding, it doesn't make sense to me because the WNBA already starts from what I view as the earliest it can possibly be for their college players to finish their seasons, which no college player who's worth a damn, respectfully, is going to say, let me not compete for a championship with my team because I'm going to get drafted into the WNBA and I have to report to training camp in Phoenix.
Yeah, it's like that's what college is for. That's what you're working towards.
That's what you work for the entire season.
Just like get there. And
that
then
is what your legacy is based on. What can I accomplish as a college player? So that makes no sense. Now, the WNBA could say, we are going to let the college players finish their game. We're going to start training camp anyways, and then we'll have the draft, and then they join training camp. But how do you build a game plan? Like, you would know this more than I do about actually being a player on a team in preseason, trying to figure out your identity and trying to put together schemes that play to the best of your abilities when you don't even know who you're going to draft in a couple weeks. So there's a lot of reasons why that doesn't make sense, regardless of the fact that now there are these off-season leagues that aren't just the overseas leagues that do coincide already with the beginning of WNBA training camp, but leagues proposed like this new Project B that would go from November to April and end right before the WNBA season. So what do those players do if they're playing for a new league and they're making $2 million? They're not going to say, What if they don't care if the WNBA is going to penalize them for coming home late? You're not going to make your whole salary because they're making more money anyways.
So it's like, what's the incentive?
I think the WNBA is shooting itself in the foot a little bit with that proposal. I understand extending the end of the season, of going later. If you want to add more games, add those games going into October, have the playoffs go later, even into November. And if the WNBA playoffs overlap with the first couple weeks of the NBA regular season, so be it. I think the WNBA has built enough of a following and enough of a base. The ratings have shown it year over year. The attendance numbers have shown it year over year. That if you have to compete with the NBA for just a little bit of time, I think people are still going to show up for the WNBA, and that's a risk you have to take.
Especially at the end of the season.
Regardless, if you put it on in March, then you're competing with March Madness, which is the biggest television draw for college basketball in the country. And March Madness already has their own television deals with all of the networks, with the CBS, the TBS, the ABC, whatever they're on, ESPN, where then you're competing with those. Well, even if you're in training camp, like there's so many factors that just don't make sense to me about that at all.
It's bizarre. And I've been trying to think about like the rationale behind it, and I haven't been able to think of one. So we'll see what happens. But I think on the topic of housing as well, Natasha Cloud said that housing is literally a top 5 priority for them. And the fact that the WNBA fires back and says, well, we're actually going to take this. It's like, well, it was obviously a priority, and now you're just fully taking it away. It just seems like a bit of a slap in the face. And I think players have responded in that way. I think Breanna Stewart tweeted and said something like, told y'all, or something like that. Like, it was, it's just bizarre.
Well, what I was reading about it is that right now, players can either choose a stipend or there's a team housing facility that they can live in. Depending on the city, that number changes. So for somewhere like New York City, players could get $2,600 a month. I did read that this new WNBA not paying for team housing proposal had vague language about we'll still take care of players on hardship contracts or players with extenuating circumstances where maybe they're moving from team to team and they don't have the stability to find themselves housing in new city. Somehow we'll make sure those players are still taken care of. But what that actually looks like is things change in the WNBA all the time. Players get injured, contracts change. There's all these different lengths of time you can be a part of a team for. So then it gets complicated of who's paying for what makes you qualified for the team to pay for you versus you to pay for yourself. And that's also difficult because then a player has to think about finding housing for themselves? Is there going to be a HR representative from the team who could find housing for you and then you just have to pay for it? Like, those are all details that I think teams would have to iron out. There is, and I'm also not sure right now if the money for housing comes out of something like the salary cap or comes out of something else that's negotiated as part of the player benefits package, because the benefits and the question of what the players are going to get, because there's other focuses on retirement benefits, on family planning benefits, on maternity leave benefits, that if those increase, is there a give or take of we're going to take all these other things lifestyle-wise, healthcare-wise, what have you, and we'll give up paying for housing because we're okay if I'm going to make $1.2 million maximum for the best players in the league, then I can pay for my own housing. There's just a lot of different factors up in the air, and it's hard to put it all in writing in a way that makes sense for everyone and encapsulates the whole league, because the league is such a complicated body with so many different levels and so many different loose ends.
Right, yeah. And, if you're making that top end 1.2, you're good. But if you're a rookie that's getting traded often and you're making the $250K, like the new minimum, then that's a little more difficult for you. It's obviously better than what it is right now, but
you're still paying for things like trainers and for
medical, it adds
whatever.
Up,
you have to pay for outside of what your team is giving you, because that also varies. That's where it comes back to the requirements for a base level of player treatment and facilities all around. Because if you're on the Aces, you have a top-of-the-art facility that probably has massage therapists and all this medical technology for you to take the best possible care of your body.
Definitely,
but if you're on the Connecticut Sun and you're still playing in Mohegan Sun Arena and
or
potentially sharing your practice court with a kid's birthday party during the playoffs, then you probably don't have access to the cold plunge pools and the whatever else you're wanting to use as a professional athlete to take care of your body and put yourself in the best position to be successful.
Definitely. Perry, you are a big advocate for women's basketball, but you just are a huge basketball fan. So what kind of first drew you to basketball? Like, did you play when you were younger? Did you have, were your role models women's basketball players? Like, how did you kind of get into the sport?
Yeah, so I grew up in New York City, and in New York City, basketball is everything. And my dad in particular is a big basketball fan. He went to Indiana, so he loves the Hoosiers. The past few years, he's loved the Hoosiers women's basketball team more even than the men's basketball team. Whoever's better, it's not about men's or women's, but he put me into first youth basketball, and then there was a development program for kids here in New York City called MoMotion that's run by actually a Northwestern alum named Maureen Hollahan, who is one of Northwestern's all-time leading scorers. And she's the one who taught me how to shoot a basketball. I do think I could have used a little bit more ball handling work. And then I got to an age where you kind of either play for your school or you play for a club team, an AAU team, and I decided to try out for an AAU program called the Riverside Hawks. I love basketball so much, and if I could have been a Division I basketball player, I would have. Unfortunately, I'm not naturally athletically gifted. I'm not tall. I can't jump. My high school volleyball coach actually told me that I had the vertical of a credit card one time, and that's a creative insult. I don't know.
Wait, to jump over?
Yeah. I jumped, because I was usually a setter, so I wasn't in hitting lines, and then one day for fun, I joined the hitting line, and I go up to take my swing, and she says, "Perry, you have the vertical of a credit card." Oh my God, that was devastating. I love sports, and I knew I wanted to work in sports and apply to journalism school, and I wanted to go to a college where I could be at a place like a Big Ten school, where I could go to sports games and have a big sports culture. That was more important to me than trying to continue my career playing at a low-level Division III school, which I would have also had to quit the other sports I played and really focus on basketball to do that. I just kind of loved playing sports everywhere. I also played volleyball and softball. I was a swim teacher. I played tennis. Sports is just everything to me. I think now that I've gone through college and journalism school in a very sociological way, I'm really fascinated with sports and how teamwork builds connections, about sports impact in society, about how politics and sports are interconnected, and sports can be a microcosm of politics in a lot of different ways. So those are just kind of things that draw me to sports. But basketball has always had a special place in my heart because I do live next to Central Park, and there's courts next to the Great Lawn, and I would grow up going to those courts, and I developed a lot as a person and built a lot of confidence on those courts, because there's something about being a 14-year-old girl having to learn how to go up to a group of 20 to 40-year-old guys for the most part and say, who's got next? Can I join your team? Or then even get to a point where you say, I got next. Like that, was a big day for me the first time I was at the park and I said, I got next. Because people look at you like you're not supposed to be there. But then at the same time, when you do play, they're the most encouraging people I've ever met. Like I've never had people who tell me to keep shooting the ball more even when I miss, or who hype me up when I have a make.
Definitely.
And so I learned a lot about myself, even more than I did playing AAU, because on my AAU team I was a bench player. I just loved being there. I loved going to practice. I loved my teammates and showing up in the gym and getting better, even though I would go sit in a convention center for 5 days and come off the bench for a total of 2 minutes in Indianapolis. Yeah. And there's nothing to do in those convention centers, but I just loved being a part of a team.
I would agree. I think there's definitely something to be said with basketball specifically about just relating to like the larger world and the larger
it just brings people
content.
Together.
Yeah, teamwork.
You can bond with people over it. You can meet people who you have absolutely nothing in common with at all and just share a love of basketball.
Like even for me growing up, like I played against my brother and his friends in the front yard, and they would beat me every time. And I would get really frustrated, but it was always like, all right, I'm going to chuck the ball right back at you and we're going again right now.
Yeah, it's like I can fall in the concrete and get right back up, and you don't need to baby me and treat me like I'm not tough. Getting back to the point of women's basketball and supporting women's basketball, I just love watching women have an outlet to be themselves and express themselves and compete and show their toughness on a scale that's greater than what I grew up with, what you grew up with. There were no A1s in stores for us to go buy at whatever Dick's Sporting Goods was close to your house. Like there's now merch, there's sponsorships, there's women in visible places.
Definitely.
And that is so meaningful to me and to the girls that are coming up now playing basketball who aren't thinking about the fact, like, I'm going to go to a store and I have to buy shoes. Oh, they don't carry women's basketball shoes. Like, everywhere has women's basketball shoes now. Definitely, and I just think that's amazing.
I agree. Representation is very important. So, me and Perry both went to Northwestern. I played at Northwestern, and she was a
broadcaster.
Like a broadcaster. Yeah. So you called some of my games in college.
I did.
So what was that experience like? Like just being able to call games, since I'm sure that's like what you want to do in the future. Just like getting that opportunity to get started in that, and then specifically for like the Northwestern women's basketball team. What was that experience like, and how was it?
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I discovered broadcasting in college. I knew I wanted to work in sports in some way, but I'd never heard of play-by-play broadcasting pretty much. Or like, I guess I watched sports my whole life. I heard the voices on TV, but they were always men's voices. It genuinely never occurred to me that I could try to do that. And then it just so happened that my freshman year orientation leader put in her welcome email, I'm Margaret, fun fact about me, I call Northwestern basketball games. It's like, that sounds really cool. How do I do that? And so I went to the interest meeting for the sports radio station. Then I eventually joined Big Ten Plus, the streaming service for Big Ten Network. And I ended up calling probably more Northwestern women's basketball games than I did any other sport. And at first I was so starstruck by the athletes. Like, I just remember my freshman year, whenever I would meet an athlete, if it was for a game I called, I would be like, I know everything about you, which is so creepy. Don't do that. I was so starstruck by athletes walking around campus and players, because I knew all the rosters, all the teams at Northwestern, people that regular Northwestern students wouldn't know. And then as I grew through college and I like met you and we became friends and I started to get to know other athletes as people, I think that was a really important thing for me to go through, of seeing athletes as people instead of just names on a sheet
or like
for me.
Statistics.
And statistics or storylines. Like these are people who play a game, but they also have their own lives and their own complexities. And I think that kind of changed my approach a little bit of just recognizing the humanity in athletes more, which is an important thing to do.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But that, I think, was the biggest lesson I learned, like learning broadcasting in college until now. But I just, I signed up to call a game. I tried it out. It was so hard and it was so bad, but I loved it. It was a soccer game, was my first ever game, and it was pouring rain, and we had to go inside at halftime because the lightning, and it was horrendous. I was freezing to the bone. There was a delay of 3 hours where I was just sitting there doing nothing, only to play 45 minutes of soccer after that, and I still loved it.
Just like being a player, you're not really focused on like the broadcast.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you get asked a question by a journalist, it's like, okay, cool in the moment, then you move on. Yeah. So it's just interesting, like, to hear that, and then also for me now to kind of be like slightly on the journalistic side and just kind of like think of things in a different way. It's just super interesting. Yeah. It's very dynamic.
Another lesson that you learn as a broadcaster, especially at a level where there's not so many people listening, is yes, you're supposed to stay neutral and you can criticize, but remember when you're being critical that it's your family who's watching. Most of the people tuning into the broadcast are people who have personal relationships to the players or the coaches or the staff or the school. And so
that's interesting, yeah.
When you say something that reflects poorly on someone or you criticize someone, there are times that could come back to bite you. There's not something I'm going to get into, but when, a couple summers ago, I was a broadcaster in this summer baseball league called the Cape Cod Baseball League, and I said something which I totally didn't think anything of, and a player came up to me and said, "Hey, did you say that on the broadcast?" I was like, "Yeah, I mean, who else would have said it?" But
it's also like journalism. It's journalism.
Yeah, and what he was mad about was something that he thought reflected on him as me somehow calling him not masculine, when really it was just a phrase, like a term, an idiot, like a phrase that I used to describe something that I wouldn't have thought twice about. So, but then you realize people are listening and people care, and clearly it was his family or something that took offense to something that I said that I never would have thought twice about. So just understanding that you have an audience, that's something I forget too as a broadcaster. Like when I broadcast, I'm so locked in. Like I have my headset on, I'm courtside, everything's right in front of me, and I'm just talking. I'm just chatting. That comes naturally to me. That's why I want to follow this career path. But then you remember that there are actually people listening, and that what you say does hold value and does impact people, and you just have to kind of think about that and remember that.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because sometimes I remember, like when we watch film, like we're not going to do it with like broadcast audio because that would be kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But I remember there being like a few times, like the only time I ever heard broadcast audio from my games was when my dad would take a video from home of the TV and then send it to me. If I like had a great like stretch or something, he'll videotape it, send it to me to be like, rewatch this so that you can like grow in your confidence and like really soak this in. And the broadcast audio would be in it. So sometimes I would be like hyper locked in because I was like, I want to know what they're saying about me.
Yeah, what are they? People, it's a natural instinct. What are they saying about me?
Or like any like little negative. I don't think I ever did hear anything negative, but I always like hoped that no one would say anything negative because I was a little insecure. But yeah, no, that's cool. That's super amazing. So yeah, at Northwestern, my junior year when Perry first started working for the broadcast, I was mainly a three-point shooter. I hadn't been previously in my career, but it was something that I just started practicing as like a sophomore in college, and I ended up being pretty good at it, which was, I wouldn't say shocking to me, but it just wasn't something that I thought that I would become a three-point shooter. So since Northwestern, my junior year, I've been really locked into elite three-point shooters. Like actually, like when I look at the statistics, I'm like, ooh. And the number one three-point shooter in women's college basketball right now is Azzi Fudd. who I think arguably could shoot better than Steph Curry, her mentor.
I was going to say, they're connected.
Yeah, so, Azzi Fudd currently is shooting this season over 50%. I think she's at 52%. And over her entire college career, which has been a tough college career for her due to injury, she's still been able to shoot 42% from three, which is very, very, very impressive. Just some interesting statistics that I found, and something that I've realized recently in terms of college players getting drafted to the WNBA. There's a huge need for proficient three-point shooters. So last season, only one player in the WNBA shot over 40% from the three-point line on at least 5 attempts per game. And if you zoom out and look at the top 50 players in terms of three-point attempts per game, only 7 shot 40% or better. So Azzi Fudd, in college, right now she's at 54.4% and 42.3% on 5.8 attempts per game. So already she's kind of superseding what those numbers are in the WNBA. Currently, WNBA teams are shooting more three-pointers than they have ever before, but they're not as proficient in terms of makes and misses as Azzi Fudd is. So I think her potential, her ceiling in terms of three-point shooting in the WNBA and that transferring to the league is something that I'm very, very, very excited to see. Another player that I'm excited to see in the WNBA who is an international player in Spain. Her name is Awa Pham, and she's kind of similar to last year's draft pick Dominique Malonga in terms of her size, her athleticism, her versatility, and her age. So Awa Pham is 19 years old, and this makes her kind of like more of an NBA draft pick, just because she is younger. She has more room to develop, along with her length and her size. I think her coming to the WNBA and having more years to develop before she even reaches 25, she's going to be a huge asset in the WNBA. So those are just two players that I've seen recently that I'm super excited about.
We're just getting into some faves in college. Yesterday, there was a great story. It was Iowa versus Iowa State. I would have to look this up, but I doubt there's ever been a time those two teams have played when they're both ranked 10th and 11th. So not only is it an interstate matchup with tons of history, which Iowa has historically dominated. They were 8-2 in the last 10. Iowa State won last night off the back of Audi Crooks, who is a phenomenal player, and she's averaging over a point per minute this season, which no one has done since Brittany Griner, and I'm pretty sure she's the only other person who has done that ever. But something really cool about Audi Crooks is that she's actually from Iowa. She's a homegrown talent, and some people say she's maybe one of the best homegrown talents to ever play at Iowa State, especially in a game like this. Her father tragically passed away, and the game, Iowa State versus Iowa, is a game that they watched together when she was growing up, and it was a huge game in her household, being from the state of Iowa, playing basketball. So for her, she actually told a story yesterday about how she teared up at the foul line. She hit free throws that put her team up 4 in the last minute of the game. She looks over to the bench at her coach, who also has a history with Iowa and connection to this game, and he pointed up at the sky, referencing her father. And she teared up at the line, and then in the post-game talked about how important this game was to her family, how meaningful that moment was to be able to pull out a win against such a big game against such a talented opponent, let alone the fact that it's the Cy-Hawk rivalry. And I just thought that was really special, because when you talk about players being people too and having their own complexities and their own things going on inside your mind, that moment for her was a very personal moment. And from the outside, nobody in the back row and section 300 of the arena or wherever can see the tears in her eyes at the free throw line, or no. Some eagle-eyed reporter probably saw that and brought it up in the post-game press conference. But that just shows you that people have off days, players have off days, they have good days, and certain things mean certain things to you that other people just wouldn't understand. And I think it's important to highlight those stories about players' humanity and about stepping up in those kind of big moments that are personal to you, because I just think that's really special.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, that sounds like an amazing moment, and I'm glad that a reporter noticed and that they were able to kind of ask her about that, and she was open in sharing.
So at the top of the show, we mentioned off-season basketball, and the league that everyone knows about is Unrivaled, founded by, of course, Stewie and Nafisa Collier. And this year they expanded from 6 teams last year to 8 teams. The winner last year, Rose, one of their headliners, Angel Reese, is not playing this year, though they are considered to be one of the favorites to repeat and win the championship. So last year, the Lunar Owls were the best team in the regular season. The Rose ended up winning. This year, from all that I've read about consensus power rankings and stuff like that, the Breeze, which is one of the expansion teams that drafted Paige Becker as first overall, is expected to be a top team, as is the Rose, even though they're without Angel Reese. There's some other teams in there that I think are personally being a little bit disrespected. A team that I'm looking at is the Phantom and the Mist being a little bit disrespected. Then when it comes to the bottom of the league, even though there's so much talent all around, because these are the best of the best, the Vinyl is a team that a lot of different experts think might not do as well for a variety of reasons. But we want to get into a couple of these teams. We can't go over all of them right now. But for me, the Phantom, which is Kelsey Plum, Satu Sabli, Aaliyah Boston, Natasha Cloud, Dana Evans, and Kiki Iriafen, I think is a really strong team. Because when you look at that post duo of Aaliyah Boston and Kiki Iriafen, who are both people who can create and rim protect and impact the defense and the offensive end, Dana Evans stood out, of course, in the Aces run to the championship as just like a dog on the court, of throwing herself all over the place, making defensive stops, hitting big shots, creating for herself. Kelsey Plum didn't play in Unrivaled last year and is now playing in Unrivaled. Satu Sabli is fantastic. She's coming back from a concussion. No one knows what those symptoms will be. But if they can put it all together, they could be a really great rebounding team. I just think they have a lot of talent on that team and a lot of balance when it comes to scoring and creating.
Well, that's funny because the Phantom was actually my bottom team.
Really? Really?
And I like agree with like everything that you said. Like obviously like Satu Sabli was insane last year.
Yeah.
Like Dana Evans had an incredible WNBA season. Like objectively, they have all the pieces. The reason I put them last was because I could not envision them playing together. Like when I really thought about like Dana Evans playing with Kelsey Plum, playing with Aaliyah Boston, I was like, it's just not making sense. Like for some reason, I just couldn't envision their styles like meshing.
Yeah.
And then it like personality maybe a little bit too. I don't know. I was just like, it was the only team that I genuinely was like, it looks so random.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a little, that's how I kind of feel about the Vinyl, which is Courtney Williams, Ryan Howard, Dearica Hamby, Erica Wheeler, Ray Burrell, and Brittany Griner.
Yeah, they were one of my lower too.
Kind of just mismatched together.
They were actually my second lowest, I think.
Yeah, they were the bottom on a lot of people's rankings. In most people's rankings, the Phantom and the Mist were kind of like 4 or 5 in there. The Mist, well, of course, has our girl Veronica Burton.
Oh, yeah.
But I also just think Alicia Gray, Brianna Stewart, Ilana Smith, Arike Gumbawale, and Lee Ueru also has some balance. But that one's another team that kind of depends on how they all play together and fit together.
With them, at least some of them have played together. I mean, at least Arike and Lee, they played together last season. Veronica has also played with Arike. So, I mean, there is some familiarity there. Yeah. At least from like point guard to big and kind of some of those dynamics, especially because Arike be shooting that ball. So Stewie's
been struggling too. I think so much of it depends on if Stewie can get back up to her standard, because she only shot 24% from 3 last year, and she was dealing with multiple injuries. So she's a star on that team, but also kind of an X factor. And if she's on, she's on. If
Definitely.
she's not, and so same with Alicia Gray, MVP caliber season last year. Her breakout of her career, she's a phenomenal player. And it's also, you look at these rosters of 6, but it's 3-on-3.
Yeah.
And so the mix of who to put on the floor at the same time is also interesting because then
it'll depend.
you have
It's like we don't really know like who's like, you know, like even for maybe like the Phantom, like I could pick 3 that would play well together. I think when I just looked at 6, I was like, not 6 together.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. But my number 1 pick for this season, I also had the Rose.
Yeah.
Just because I think, just right off the top, like Kalia Copper, Chelsea Gray, like last year, they were like the ultimate scorers.
Yeah,
I feel like
they're both amazing.
Playmakers, like their athleticism, perfect for a 3-on-3. And then and then Alexi Hole also, like she played very well, I thought, in terms of like her scrappiness and how athletic she is, like and just getting like second chance rebounds and getting steals and just
she's a hustler.
Yeah,
she is a hustler.
And you need that on 3-on-3. Like that was a big factor with like I think teams that played well was like how hard are you playing, and how savvy can you be, and I think in the post as well, Stevens. She was one of my favorite players last year. Like, really? I thought she just dominated. And it was like, because she's versatile. Like, she can be in the post, and like she's so like lengthy that she can finish over people, but she's also not like such a true 5 to the point to where she can't step out and like shoot threes.
Well, that's my one problem with the Rose minus Angel Reese is like missing a little bit of size and rebounding. I think might be an issue for them. The Breeze is a super interesting team that we didn't break down yet. Paige Beckers, Rickea Jackson, Dominique Malonga, Ari McDonald, Kate Martin, and Cameron Brink. It's so young. Yeah, everyone on there.
But are they too young?
Well, they could be, but it also could be, it's kind of like a next generation of basketball.
next gen Unrivaled.
And, I mean, just looking at, like, we know the history of, like, Rickea Jackson playing with her brothers, scrappy, tough. Paige Beckers, too, is someone, like, I think the two of them together is going to be super fun, because I think they're going to kind of egg each other on when it comes to, like, creativity and scoring.
I would agree. Cameron Brink and Dominique Malonga.
That duo is unreal of the rim protection. Of that duo, the blocks, the defense. I think they're the strongest post duo on any team. And
for 3-on-3, for sure.
For 3-on-3. Well, because that's the question is like, you could put them on the floor at the same time. And who can defend both of them on the floor at the same time?
No one's
3-on-3.
No, they're not letting any layups get up.
Yeah, no, they're not letting any layups get up, but also on the offensive end, like, you put one at the high post and you put one at the block, who's beating them when they really try to back you down or play with each other in like a 2-game. You know,
for sure. Yeah.
That duo, I see why a lot of people have them at the top. I think that duo is really great. Yeah. And then just like Ari McDonald, Kate Martin are really great depth pieces.
Yeah, solid players for sure. And I think I was even thinking with Cameron Brink and Dominique Malonga, like Dominique, rookie, Cameron Brink, she's out a few years in the league.
But with
not
the
a ton.
injury, she hasn't really gotten to...
Yeah, so I feel like they both kind of have something to prove together. So I feel like, that could be a factor to help them go far.
Something I think is super interesting on the Hive, which is Kelsey Mitchell, Sonia Citron, Ezzy Magbagor, Natisha Heidemann, Sanaya Rivers, and Monique Billings, is the Sanaya Rivers and Sonia Citron being on the same team. Because they were rivals in college, Notre Dame and NC State. Right. And they were kind of rivals in the first season of the WNBA in Washington and Connecticut. They see each other a lot. They've always played against each other. I think they play a similar kind of game. Yeah. Very defensive-minded of, like, taking the risks in the passing lanes and playing quickly, of getting to the rim and attacking off the dribble. So them together is an interesting
They're savvy. They're super savvy. Like, I think just speed, like not even quickness, just get down the court speed. Like that from them two is insane. Kelsey Mitchell, that's your quick primary move, jab, get to the rim quickness. Yeah. Natasha Heidemann, insanely quick. I think this is the fastest team that we've seen in Unrivaled thus far. Yeah. And I was thinking too, beehive, how bees are fast. Did they do that on purpose? I was like, maybe.
I mean, I think the name was there before.
This is a fast team. This is the fastest. You can't put them in a 100 anything. They're
and
running.
that feels like the opposite of like the Lunar Owls are like a shooting team. Like they're gonna live and die by the three. Half of their team.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And a little bit less savvy and quick. Like obviously, like Skylar Diggins, she's very quick, but I think overall, very, very, very different vibe from the Hive. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see like how everything kind of like pans out.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, to what extent is speed gonna override, like strength gonna override 3-point ability, driving ability? Because last year I felt like it was kind of all over the place. So yeah. We'll see.
I'm just super interested overall. Last year, there were some numbers after the season. Someone like Angel Reese, who her numbers in the WNBA went up significantly across the board after she played in Unrivaled. I think that's just kind of a test of how does playing 3-on-3 full court impact your game. Well, you have to work on your conditioning in the off season because you're going to be running the entire time. That game doesn't slow down to allow you to set up in an offense. Like you're just moving all the time. You have to rebound in different ways. There's so much more space on the floor, and I think players learn different things. So I just am kind of generally interested in how Unrivaled then translates back to the WNBA. And I just love how you have players on all these different teams who have only played against each other now playing with each other. Like there's definitely going to be some growing pains there. I wonder if there's going to be any tension or fights anything like that. Like I'm sure there will be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, get the popcorn ready.
We're here for it. We are here for it. But yeah, last thing I want to say on the Mist, because we didn't really mention them, but I do think that they are going. Oh yeah, no, we did talk about them, but they were my second top, and I think it's just because I see potential for them to mesh very well.
Yeah,
like
I could see that.
I don't even know how to explain it. I just kind of looked at the names and I was like, yup.
Yeah.
Even just like with Veronica at 1 and how good of a leader she is, playing with Arike, who she's played with before. But I just feel like the dynamic between, playing 3-on-3 and, shooting guards and all that, you have to be a selfless player.
Yeah.
And so I see them thriving.
Also the defensive duo of Veronica Burton and Alana Smith together. Yeah. That's such a strong defensive duo.
For sure. Yeah.
On to our last segment of today's episode, something I wanted to include whenever we have the chance to get together and record these podcasts is a little history lesson. I love history. I want to learn more about the WNBA. It's a chance for me to do some research. And given the topics of the collective bargaining and negotiations that are happening right now, I thought it was very pertinent to talk about the first ever WNBA CBA, which was ratified in 1999. So the league was actually founded in 1997, and at the time, there was another women's basketball league called the ABL that had most of the players from the 1996 gold medal winning Olympic team, like Jennifer Azzi and Teresa Edwards, Dawn Staley, Carla McGee. And then there was the original 8 WNBA teams, which had people like Rebecca Lobo, who was one of the player representatives who was helping negotiate those contracts in the CBA. And the WNBA players were nervous that the WNBA was going to become flooded with the ABL players and they wouldn't be able to have their spots. So the biggest topic of contention when we talk about now the CBA, it's like player housing and it benefits, what have you. For them, it was, we don't want too many ABL players to join the WNBA and take our roster spots. They wanted teams to only be allowed to take 2 ABL players. They ended up negotiating that to 3. So in 1999, when this was ratified, teams could only take 3 ABL players and the rest had to be from that pool of the already established WNBPA, which was, when the WNBPA was founded, the first player union for women's professional athletes anywhere. So that's also just really cool and goes back to the WNBA constantly leading the way when it comes to women's rights as athletes and women's visibility as athletes. Other topics of negotiation on the table were a 401k plan, royalties for merchandise, which is kind of like the revenue sharing, but at a much lower level, guaranteed salaries for players who play over 50% of the games, and also health benefits, including maternity leave and dental plans. All of that has been augmented in newer versions of the CBA. When you look at actual salaries, the minimum salary for rookies was $25K. The minimum salary for vets was $30K. And every year, those increased by $2,500. So by 2002, the vets would earn $40,000 and the rookies would earn $30,000. So thinking about where we started with the WNBA at the outset to where we are now, even the last CBA, there's not that big of a difference between $30K for rookies and $66K for rookies. So the fact that it took 20 years to get to that point, and the current iteration of the CBA that we're in 2025 is a minimum of $66K for rookies, puts a lot of things into perspective.
For sure. Yeah.
When you now look at the recent proposals from the WNBA that are going to put the minimum at closer to $225,000, $250,000 when all is said and done. So that just puts a lot of things into perspective. That is the WNBA historical fact of the day, and just the theme of the day, women being leaders and women fighting for what they're worth. It's what we love to see.
Exactly. I am not really good at econ and stuff like that, but I wonder how inflation has changed. What the number would be.
Right, aren't those basically the same number at this point, the
yeah.
way that the economy has changed? And that's a great point.
I wonder what it exactly is, so we can be oh, it's actually gone up 1,000.
That could even be worth less, 40K or 30K in the year 2000 could be worth just as much as 60K in the year 2025.
At all.
So it really hasn't changed at all. At all.
Nothing. I'm laughing, but it's because it's sad. I'm laughing because it's so sad and because I care so much. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, thank you for the history trivia tidbits. I think it's really important to understand history when it comes to basketball and women's basketball, where we've come from, and to use that as a way to understand what it means when we're talking about the CBA and what players are fighting for in the future, because it's been a long time that things have been unjust. So that wraps up our episode this week.
Excited to see how these continue to play out. I mean, there's so much happening. We're getting in this at a good time. The CBA negotiations are happening. We didn't even get to Project B, which we'll probably talk about on our next show. And then we get right into Unrivaled, and we're into the bulk of the college season, and we're right back into if the WNBA season happens, which I hope it does. So I'm excited. We've got a lot to keep talking about.
Definitely. I'm excited.
And, yeah, we love women's hoops. That's the message.